Welcome, everyone, to the Ghost Helpers podcast, where the paranormal is our normal. I'm really thrilled today to welcome my longtime podcast friend and fellow host, Lino Martinez, and he is the host of A Little Less Fear podcast. And we kind of stumbled on each other, and we've been doing podcasts together ever since. So, welcome, Lino. It's super great to have you here.
Thank you. I mean, it's really wonderful to be on your podcast. You were on my podcast 7 times, which is incredible and outrageous and beautiful. And these topics that you discuss. I mean, I've been listening to your audiobooks for months now, and it's just really, I have so many questions. And thank you so much for this platform. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm really thrilled to have you. And the paranormal is so interesting, and it goes beyond just ghosts and things that go bump in the night. There's a lot of science behind this, and the title of this is Ghost Helpers and Quantum Entanglement. And people are going, oh my gosh, can we wrap our brain around that?
Sure.
But I think we can.
Mm-hmm.
So what I thought I would do is start this podcast by a definition of quantum entanglement. And yes, I did get this from the internet, but it does give a most basic definition that we can begin to address. So I'm going to go ahead and read that.
Okay.
Quantum entanglement is a phenomenon in quantum physics where the states of two or more particles become interconnected, such that the state of one particle cannot be described independently of the state of the others, even when they are separated by vast distances. This unique property leads to correlations in their measurements that cannot be explained by classical physics, and I'm adding, or by what we used to know as Newtonian physics, or what we know as Newtonian physics, because now we're in a whole new kind of physics. And so when I read that kind of crazy definition, it's like we're all connected, which is also part of the definition of string theory. We're connected by all these strings. So let me start out and ask you, what are your thoughts on this?
So I'm writing this down. So we're connected all by strings.
Yes.
Whether we're in physical form or not.
Whether we're in physical form or not, whether we're in this dimension or not. Now, this definition doesn't say that, but for this to take place, we have to look at the basic elements: earth, air, water, fire, and the fifth element is ether. And quantum entanglement takes place, string theory takes place in the ether. And all of the ancients knew this. Without the ether, nothing makes sense. And that all happens in the fourth dimension. That's why this is so fascinating, because now you can begin to get your brain around how psychic phenomenon can actually work in a quantum physics environment. Does that make sense?
So, right, what makes sense to me is because we're all connected by strings, and could you go back and repeat the part that said about particles?
It said, quantum entanglement is a phenomenon in quantum physics where the states of two or more particles become interconnected, such that the state of one particle cannot be described independently of the state of the others, even when separated by large distances. And based on what astrophysicists have discussed, this is across galaxies, across universes. Whether it's across the street or across the universe, this is a universal constant. That's what they're saying. And this is true. This has been described in several spiritual traditions. So we know this was described in the Huna tradition. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Huna.
Is it like Polynesian?
Basically, Huna was started by the great Hawaiian kahunas. See, you can begin to see the language connection there. And the basis of Huna is that we are all connected from our solar plexus right here below our breastplate.
Okay.
by something called Kino Aka substance. It's called the thin blue cord. This is not the silver cord that connects the soul to the body. This is a different cord. It's called Kino Aka substance. And the best book to read about this is Enid Hoffman's book, Huna, A Beginner's Guide. And no, it's not about quantum physics, but it explains this. And the Aka substance records every single nanosecond of everyone's existence throughout time and space.
Okay.
And that Kino Aka substance is the basis of Akashic records, because the root word of Akashic is AKA, Aka. It's even spelled the same. And this goes back to the original language of the 12 tribes. And the 12 tribes, a lot of the Hawaiian words, and they've discovered this in the Berber tribesmen in Northern Africa, and a lot of the people, some of the original peoples of Spain have these original root language words. So in the beginning, a lot of these words were universal. So this issue of Akashic records that everybody talks about, let's find out where that came from. And it comes from this connection with your Kino Aka substance. So when I first met you, we had a thin blue cord was created between us. So let's bring it down to on an individual level. We now have an Aka cord that connects us. And so the more we have interactions, the thicker that gets. So if you looked at it, it's super thin, but the more you have interaction, it gets to be thicker and thicker, like, like this pen. I'll show this against my white jacket here. Those cords become super thick and strong. Well, that would apply to family members. That's why this is the basis of telepathy. So let me stop for a minute. Questions?
Okay, so this Aka, how do you say the Aka cord? How do you pronounce that again?
It's Kino Aka substance is the blue cord, or Aka Aka cord.
Okay, so this Kino Aka substance cord, which is a blue cord, is different from the silver cord that attaches our life here, or our soul, or grounds us, correct?
Correct. And the silver cord is attached to the seed atom of the soul in the heart.
Okay. It's attached to
the seed atom of the soul. And that's a different chakra. So you have the heart chakra, which has the silver cord, which tethers the soul to the body.
Okay. How many cords do we have?
2.
Okay.
We have 2 named cords. The silver cord only connects you to your soul to your body. And when you die, the silver cord is severed, and all of the memories that were accumulated in the Aka cord are transferred to the silver cord, and that's what you leave with. That's why you might have a memory of a past life flash, because it's all contained in the heart chakra.
Okay. Just writing this down so that I fully understand. I have a deep question after this.
Okay.
Ask it. So
go ahead, take your time, because I think this is really fascinating to discuss it.
Right, it is. So when we die, our silver cord detaches and attaches to the blue Kino Aka substance blue cord, in which all our memories and our experiences get transferred onto this blue cord. And so when somebody reincarnates or incarnates back into their human form and has their silver cord reattached, or it's a brand new silver cord at this point?
The Akashic record is always, the silver cord never leaves the soul. Okay. So if you think about it, the silver cord basically becomes the soul and all of its memories. And the Aka cord and the silver cord have a constant connection till the Aka cord is broken off as the physical body dies. The silver cord encompasses all of the memories, And that's what the soul leaves with. The silver cord is the soul, one of the best ways to describe it, because it's carrying all the memories of everyone you ever met, everything you ever did, every place you've ever been, and every single thing you've ever touched.
That is what is in the silver cord.
That is in the silver cord all the time, always operating, which is why you can do a past life regression and discover things that happened in another time and place, because it's like it's the ever constant memory that lives within the body.
Thank you for that. Okay, I'm getting more clarity. But the blue cord, though, I'm thinking this in terms of like the computer. So it does like a data transfer.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
So the blue cord is recording. It does a data transfer to the silver cord, in which the silver cord keeps forever and ever and ever and ever.
Correct.
What happens to that blue cord when it detaches?
Well, the blue cord is detached through the solar plexus, and it simply is no longer needed because the data transfer has taken place and sent to the heart to the silver cord.
Okay.
And then that cord goes with you at death, and you might not reincarnate for 1,000 years. I mean, there's nothing that says that you're going to come back in 5 years or 50 years or 500 years. It's whatever karmically is, you're supposed to do to come back and work through things. So, but all the memories of all the previous lives come with you.
That's amazing. And so the blue cord just completely dissipates. It disappears. It's gone, wiped out.
It's gone. And this is why when a person dies and the blue cord is severed, when the spark that animates the human body leaves and the soul separates from the body, the Aka cords that connected us to the people we've known and loved come roiling back to them, and they feel nauseated and feel like vomiting. They don't feel it in their heart or their head. They feel it in their solar plexus, because that's where the Aka cord connected you to that person.
You're talking about grief.
I'm talking about grief. So a lot of people will go, oh my gosh, so-and-so just died. How does that person know that?
Right. Yeah.
Know that because could be two reasons. The Aka cord with the person when they died is cut and severed, and it comes back to you. Especially if it's a sudden death, you might double over. If, however, the person is dying and you're with them and you can see that they're going to leave, the cords that connected you are slowly but surely being severed as you're pre-grieving this person dying. But if it's a sudden death, those cords are chopped off, and you go, whoa, what happened? That's why it's not, every person's death is different, and the reaction people have to it is going to be different.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I have a question in regards to this whole time I thought quantum entanglement. I mean, I've read about, I love quantum physics. I never really actually gone deep into what the definition of entanglement was. And I feel that a lot of the times I confuse quantum entanglement with multi-dimensions, like dimensional, on the, different dimensional parallel lives type thing.
Well, to keep this somewhat simple, because this is not simple,
No.
but people who really want to understand metaphysics, this is kind of like mental popcorn, so we're going to have a good time with it.
I love it. I love mental popcorn.
When you think about paranormal, you're experiencing something in the ether, the fifth element. Mm-hmm. And that ether is the fourth dimension. And all prayer is sent through the fourth dimension. Okay. Dreams take place in the fourth dimension. Oh, wow. Telepathy takes place in the fourth dimension.
Oh, nice.
The feeling, I have a feeling every now and then that someone is going to call me. And 2 days later, they call me because the Aka cord connecting me to that person, there was something where they were thinking about me and it registered. Now, if that happened with every single person who ever thinks about you, you'd go completely mad.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, but it helps you to understand how you can hear someone's thoughts and they're 9,000 miles away in another country, or they are, Southern California and you're, in Maine or something. Because in the ether, there is no time, there's no space, there's no gravity. That's why understanding the ether is really important when you're understanding the elements of metaphysics, because without understanding the ether, none of this makes sense.
Right, absolutely. And so something that I'm feeling. So recently, like a week ago, an ex-girlfriend of mine from 3 years ago, and her daughter popped in my mind, and I wasn't forcing the thought. I wasn't thinking about them. They just came to my mind, both of them, and I felt that maybe they or one of them was thinking about me and transferred those thoughts over. Is that part of the blue cord?
Yes, you
Okay.
have a connection.
Yeah.
And if they're thinking about you, and it's interesting, we're connected to thousands of people.
Hmm.
I mean, if you were to do the numbers over a lifetime, it's thousands of people.
That's outrageous.
It's just astounding.
Yeah.
That's why if someone was horrible to you and you reincarnate and that person reincarnates with you, you're saying to yourself, your subconscious recognizes the person because the subconscious is helping to record everything you're experiencing, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the awesome.
Sure. Sure. Okay, so that absolutely makes sense. So we're connected by the blue cord, regardless of whether it's this life or a life from 1,000 years ago.
Correct.
And especially if they are reincarnated at the same time that I'm reincarnated, then most likely we're going to be at some point, somehow, feeling each other, even if we haven't met in this life.
Correct. There was a wonderful film that starred Robin Williams. It's a hard film to watch. And the name of the film is What Dreams May Come.
I've heard of it. I may have seen it years ago, but I need to see it again with this mindset.
And she is it's a hard film to watch. They discuss Akashic records. They in their own bizarre kind of way. They address these connections. And at the end of the film, they show these two kids and they're 10 and 12 years old. And they have this instant connection. It's like, I know you.
Yeah.
When my brother worked at SAG-AFTRA for a lot of years, for 20 years, and he said, I know this person from a past life, and this person was my kid in another life, and I recognized them. And I said, how many kids did you have? And he said, I don't have any this life, but in another life I had a lot of kids, and I think they all work here. It was hysterical. And although he wasn't joking, he meant this.
I believe it.
And one of the women, she actually almost looked like his daughter. There was a picture of the two of them at her wedding, and he looked like the proud father. And so he said, I know she was one of my kids. He said I just have this connection to her in this very fatherly, loving way, because she's a good person in that life. She's a great person in this life. And it feels really good to be connected. But this is why people observe that a person who is murdered by someone is murdered by that same person life after life after life. You know your murderer. You just don't know that you know that.
That's incredible.
And that's why people come back, so that maybe in the current life they won't take those same actions. They won't make the same decisions. This time, they're going to do it a little differently. That's what the hope is.
That is definitely the hope. I would hope that too. So right now, the story that you told me about your brother, going back to that story, I just had this experience last week. I went to visit one of my friends in Redlands area where I grew up, and I've known her for about 30 years. And her son now is 14, and the last I saw him, he was 5. They were split up, and now she's got full custody, so she's proud mama, happy mama. But there was this connection I had with her son, and I could not explain it. But he kept wanting to be around me. It was because her family owns a jewelry store, so hanging out at the jewelry store, and kept wanting to show me his guitar. And even though I don't know this boy, I met him when he was 5, and he's 14 now. But there was this sweetness, this like I felt very like paternal. And when I left, he was on my mind heavily. And that evening, I mean, actually, the next day, my friend texted me, and right as I was thinking about the connection I felt with her son, I wanted to see him. I want to take him to the movies. I want to do things with him. And I don't know where this is coming from at the time, but this conversation is making sense. And so she texted me the next day. And she said, "I loved how you interacted with my son, and he says you're very nice." And I was like, that's incredible, because I have this desire, and I still do. And I'm going back this week to see my mom, because that's where they're at. And I'm hoping to see him and connect with him again. And I know that this interesting connection I have with the son that I don't know in this life, I feel is my son in another life. For some reason, I feel it. Yeah.
Well, that would explain my husband and I.
Yeah.
I was engaged with ring to someone else. I picked out every stone. And, and I met my husband the first day at my first duty station in the Navy in New London, Connecticut. And the moment I met him, I went, "Oh my God, that's the guy. That's who I'm supposed to marry. Oh my gosh, I really love my ring." And there was no question. There's just, this is the guy. And I think that what happens is this explains love at first sight.
Mm-hmm.
And over the centuries, and I have said this many times, one of us always died in another life. And this is the first life we get to have a whole life together and work through everything. And, 52 years later, which is kind of amazing in today's world, it's still a happy marriage. He still is Superman to me, because when I met him, he had birth control glasses and he had the same square jaw. He looked just like Christopher Reeve in the 70s. Tall, gangly kind of a guy, and still a really handsome man. So I really did well. What I'm saying is, I knew him, and over time, both of us went back and had regressions, and we saw we had been together life after life in so many different lives in so many different places. And this was the lifetime that we could complete. This was a lifetime, I would just call it completion, where we work through the different things that every person works through in any relationship. And you see if you can come out the other side of that, working through it, in a great place. And my husband spent 42 years out of the 52. We've only not been at sea 10 years, at sea.
Wow.
And I could feel things. There was this happened in 2005. That's 20 years ago. I was at a school in Sacramento studying biogeometry, and he was at sea on a research ship. He retired from the Navy, joined the Merchant Marine, and he had a ship that did oceanographic research for the government. He was a captain. And I had this wave hit me of terror and fear and danger and horror. And it just reduced me to jello. I had to leave where I was, and I just found someplace in a parking lot and sat there and cried for several hours, because I felt that he was literally on the brink of death, and I didn't know why. I couldn't see it. I just knew that something horrible was either about to happen or had happened, and that there was a large possibility I was going to get a phone call that said, "We're sorry, Mrs. Erwin, but something's happened to your husband." And so I wrote him an email that night that said, "No matter what happens, I want you to always remember how much I love you and that my heart is with you, but I feel like there's something going on." So 12 hours passes, and I finally get an email, because he's in the middle of the Pacific somewhere. And what happened was he woke up in the middle of the night, very probably about the same time I had this wave hit me. He woke up and he had this terrible feeling of danger, which is probably his subconscious warning him. He leaves his stateroom, runs into the engineer. They looked at each other and barreled toward the engine room. When they opened the door, there was atomized fuel. One spark. There would not have been a body to bury on that ship. And he was literally in the jaws of death. And he and the engineer very, very carefully shut down all the engines. They were dead in the water. And they woke up the crew and they started to scrub the engine room and get the fuel, plug the leak, send a situation report, and bring the potential disaster to some back to normal. And I got an email from him and he said, he described what happened and how terrified he was. And he said, I noticed the time you sent the email was about the time I woke up. So he and I have over centuries this massive connection to each other. And in that moment, because I spent not just crying, I was praying for my husband, for his crew, for anybody surrounding who would be injured by this. You don't just pray because, I feel sad. You're praying for everyone who might be involved. And I'm grateful those prayers were answered and that everyone he had working with him was so competent. But in that moment, that quantum entanglement, it didn't matter how far away he was or what time of day it was. It came and it hit me like this, like it hit me like a brick. It was so powerful.
Thanks for that incredible story. I'm picturing it. It's like a movie. It could be a great movie too. You know what I'm feeling? So the more, and I'm just being hypothetical. So the more lives that you live with someone, the thicker the blue cord.
Correct.
Okay. And so the thicker the blue cord, the more telepathic you are with someone, as you said earlier.
Yes. Although I have had the same situation with clients that I've only had, I've only worked with them a couple of times, because it isn't always just the thickness of the cord. Sometimes it's the emotion of the person, and they're sending out what's called a psychic scream. And I've heard several intuitives discuss the psychic scream, which could be heard not just across a room, but across a universe. That is quantum entanglement. That is string theory. That energy that you're projecting out has no barrier because it's moving through the fourth dimension. It's not encumbered by a door. If you think about it, sound can be muffled in a soundproof room, but with enough powerful energy, the sound has to burst out past anything that encumbers it. And it's an emotional scream as well.
I have to bring in some other elements, because as you're talking about this, my mind is just thinking a million miles a minute. So I now understand. Thank you for explaining the blue cord. But how does I might completely throw you off with the topic of quantum entanglement, or maybe not. But how does karma come into play in this case?
That's not off topic. That's absolutely on topic. So, and that's great. I so look forward to this discussion with you, because that's where your mind works. It's so much fun. Karma works in that.
So I'm sorry, I got to interrupt you, because something that came to my mind as you, when you had that, the warning, the quantum entanglement worry that you had that something was going to happen to your husband, could not that have also been karma that you had to interplay into your relationship to either save his life somehow, or maybe you did save his life in another way, and this was a warning? I mean, couldn't this be all part of karma as well?
It's all part of karma.
Okay.
You cannot take a breath without it being karmic.
Okay.
Everything you do and say is part of karma. So your Akashic record is also your karmic record. I had a psychic tell me one time that for $600 she could erase all my karma. And unfortunately, I was in a room full of people, and I started laughing so hysterically I had to leave the room, because that is, you can't erase someone's karma. I don't care how much money they pay you. And if you were, you're a really good person and you've done good things, why would you want that erased?
All right.
You would want that to come back to you because it's a karmic law. She was presuming that everything you'd ever done was horrible.
Right.
And that's not true. We're complicated. Maybe we've made mistakes. Yeah, we got to work through that karma. But maybe we're here because we did wonderful things and we are working through this karma, and it's coming back to us in fabulous ways. I mean, look at it this way. We have the karma to actually have this conversation together and to enjoy each other's personality on the show.
I love this karma.
And people think karma is good or bad, but it's it's like an old Macintosh, 28 shades of gray.
Okay, great. So karma comes within the quantum entanglement. I have another question. And actually, this was the first question that I had when we first started talking about all this. And I'm sorry if it takes us off topic, but I can't release it off of my own quantum entanglement unless we talk about it. So, parallel lives. We're living millions, right, of different lives all at once. Oh, we can't even count how many lives we're living at the same time, or how many instances, like how many times we're doing this over and over, over and over, over and over.
Parallel lives are a very challenging concept to even quantify. But if that's true, if we're living parallel lives, we want to make very careful that no matter which life we're living, that we are conscious of our actions. And maybe the positive actions each of us takes in the current life then starts to be mirrored out through the parallel lives. And all of the good things that we're doing, or the prayers that we're saying, or the love that we're sharing with another person, all of those things can echo out in such an amazing and beautiful way. And when you look at all the parallel lives and the intersections of them, we're still all connected. All that information is coming. It's all creating the dynamic of a soul.
Okay, so parallel lives are creating the dynamic of a soul, and we have the ability to change our karma also by raising our frequency and maybe live and being in a different reality depending on our karmic frequency.
Correct.
Okay, so if somebody dies in this current frequency that you and I are on, that would mean that not necessarily are they dead in another parallel life.
Perhaps not. If there was a comment that Christ made in many of the teachings when he walked the earth for those 33 years, that it's, think of me, I will be with you. Whenever two or more are gathered, I will be there. All right, so let's look at this since we know that statement was made, that's well established. It's in a lot of different teachings. With the truth of that statement, and you have millions of people all over the world, that would mean that the energy of Christ is then spread through those realities through quantum entanglement, whether he's in the fifth dimension and you're in the third. He can be with you. That's part of this whole definition. But if you have millions of those people, now let's make the equation even more dynamic across all these parallel lives. which means that if he can be present in all of these different ways and at his advanced level, then we are interacting with maybe various iterations of ourselves. And maybe when we cross over, our soul is restored by pulling in somehow all the best of who we are and who we have ever been. Maybe that's a possibility, because I'm not saying everything I'm saying is correct. I'm throwing ideas out to see how you and anyone else listening might feel about this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what you're saying feels true for me too. A lot of this stuff feels true for me because anything that's possible is possible. So, so whatever feels mostly true, it's just, it all feels mostly true, honestly. It does.
Well, if you think about a person who commits crimes, and it's my theory that every time someone does something very detrimental, they're harming their part of themselves, they're harming their subconscious, or they put themselves in danger, and little bits of themselves are shaved off life after life after life. Well, when that happens, then if that's what's taking place, then what happens in a parallel universe may be that somehow that person is either ill, or they feel diminished somehow, or they feel fogged and they can't explain it. And we don't know how what we do in this particular universe is echoing through all the other parallel universes we may be experiencing. And are we experiencing the same conversations at the same time in parallel universe, like the infinity mirrors,
Yeah.
The event horizon kind of thing? Or are we living completely different kinds of lives with maybe a lot of the same personalities and some of the same experiences, but they're different? Does that enhance the overall dynamic of the soul? Again, these are theories to ponder. I think these are possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, just the fact that it's even coming into your consciousness, I feel like any possibility is being, it's happening. Otherwise, it wouldn't be coming into your consciousness, right? Even a creative thought.
Well, here's another interesting thing about creative thought. I don't know, parallel universes. Let's talk about inventions.
Ooh, I love that.
Because we know scientifically that a lot of inventors came up, and this is true for the Wright brothers. It's as if there is this, and this is why in metaphysics we call it the mind belt, MIND, mind belt. And that if you're at a certain frequency and a certain knowledge level, that somehow you're interconnected with all the other people on earth who are connecting to that same knowledge level,
Or that same frequency.
that same frequency, that same curiosity. You're of like mind. And many people came up with flight within almost months of each other. The Wright brothers weren't the only ones. There was a gentleman in Paris who came up with something virtually identical to the Wright brothers. I mean, and it's the turn of the century. They couldn't communicate with each other. Who knew? It wasn't like you could put it on the internet.
Right.
And we know that the Chinese had been studying flight for God knows how long, centuries. And now all of a sudden, all of these people start thinking of it at the same time and inventing it and coming up with airplanes. So was that planned? Is that part of our evolution? But we do know that the mind belt has all this. For instance, let's look at another example with the mind belt. There were several movies that were about to be either made or released about planes flying into the Twin Towers. And when it happened in 9/11, Hollywood was freaking out because not only did it appear on The Simpsons, gee, how did they know? But there were also several either television shows or movies that were going to be released about two airplanes flying into those towers.
Mm-hmm.
So was the planning for 9/11, whoever did it, part of the mind belt, and people were tapping into it?
Yes, I feel that. I feel that to be true. I mean, it's the same with pyramids, right? There were pyramids thousands of years apart being built for almost the same reason, the same purpose.
Exactly. And so let's go back to the 9/11 thing, because this now takes us to premonitions.
Yeah.
So so and parallel universes, which is why this is so complicated. If you are in a parallel universe and maybe this plane crash happens and but you are feeling it, you have a connection. I mean, I had a premonition of Pan Am 103 in January of that year, and it happened in December. So all these people dying that I saw, these people had another 11 months to live. I couldn't tell you in time and space when the crash was going to take place or the bomb was going to go off, but I knew with a sickening certainty that it was going to happen. So in a parallel universe, had it already happened and it echoed back to me, I'm throwing ideas. This doesn't mean that this is exactly what happened, but it's a possibility.
And so if that's a possibility, then it's a possibility that the future for everyone is already created. It's already done.
It's a possibility, and yet that's where the free will concept becomes problematic. Because is it destined, or do we have free will?
The way that I have understood it, or the way that I have felt it, is that we are predestined, and our free will allows us to learn and grow and change the frequency and the vibration of that situation. So if it is my destiny to be in this conversation with you, or it's been in my destiny to have met with you on Zoom for 12 times in the last 3 years, and if it's in my frequency or my future that we'll meet in person, it's already been predestined. But we have the free will to experience it different ways, either positively or negatively. Either we can choose to grow or dismantle what we have built through our blue port.
I think all of that's a possibility. I think that part of the focus of the discussion is to have all of these concepts come out and kind of sit them on the table and let people savor them or taste them or try them out. How does that feel? The people who were standing on the cliffs as the Titanic pulled away, several of them were screaming, they're never going to see the light of day. They're going to die. They're going to die. I mean, that's well recorded. The man who wrote the story about the Titan that sank and it hit an iceberg was so accurate in what he wrote. How did he know that? Did he see that future? It's
I also feel that a lot of people aren't aware of that they're seeing futures, and they're because they're so much and so free within that creative space that it allows that channel to come through.
well, that's certainly possible.
Yeah, but they're unaware of what they're creating. It's already been created, and they're just channeling it through.
It's coming through them, and it's not like they woke up and said, "Gee, I think I'll channel a plane crash today."
Right.
They would not have any idea. They think they're going to work or coming home or going to make supper.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know that this incredible event is about to happen, and they just see something, but they don't see every plane crash. They don't see every train wreck. They don't see the death of a loved one. One of the questions people had about Nostradamus was during the time of plague, he could predict all these incredible things into the future. He walked among people with plague and he was completely untouched by it.
Mm-hmm.
But he did not predict the death of his wife and children. He didn't see that coming, and they all died. It was a tremendous tragedy for him, which is why it's important to understand, again, bringing the concept of karma in. Is this what happens? Karmically, he wasn't allowed to see that.
Right.
Karmically, he wasn't allowed to change that particular future.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it created great grief for him.
Sure.
But he was allowed to see this, but not that.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the karma. You see this event, but not this one.
Okay,
And
so
what you see changes, and it doesn't happen at all.
that's incredible, and that, I mean, it makes sense to me because of my also my understanding of soul contracts. So we've got soul contracts and experiences and things that we incarnated to experience, but not be aware that we're going to experience it. So we've got no way to really predict it, even if we're the best, most incredible predictors, psychic in the world, because these
Correct.
are things that we're blinded to because we still have a destiny, a karmic destiny to fulfill, regardless of our abilities and talents.
And that is the perfect explanation for what happened to Nostradamus.
Yes, absolutely.
He couldn't,
Makes sense to me.
yeah, he couldn't stop it because he wasn't allowed to see it.
Mhm.
And when I was in the early 80s, I had this, someone showed me that my sister's house with ambulances and that one of her children died. And I was horrified. I couldn't see which child. I mean, I could see the entire scenario happening, but I could never see which child. But I knew with this sickening certainty she was going to lose a child. But I couldn't tell her that. I mean, now you know, if I focus on it, do I create the reality? And what if an action takes place where it doesn't happen? What if I'm wrong? Oh my gosh, that would be so cruel.
Right.
And when she died in 2003, I went into shock. I mean, I could, everything that they showed me happened the way they showed it to me, but now I knew which child died.
Mm-hmm.
And I still grieved it. And I realized that I was never going to be allowed to stop it because karmically, her death had to happen for reasons I'm still discovering. And it was a massive lesson, not just for me or her family, her immediate family. It's just what happened. And her time was over. She had other things to do. And I'm glad we were able to cross her over.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that loss and that experience that you had. It's awful, and also I can't even imagine that. I can't.
I thank you for that. And at the same time, it was a massive growth experience.
Mhm.
And it opened the doors for me to understanding how someone would feel at the loss of a child in a way that's so intimate and personal, and
Mhm.
expanded my heart of compassion. I'm never going to say to someone, "Oh, I know how you feel," because their experience is personal. What I can say is, I have an understanding for how hard this is, but how you feel is deeply personal, and I respect that. And so the theory that these things are connected. I'm still connected to this child when she's in the higher realms. I think about her every day. And when someone dies and you cross them over and you're thinking about them and sending them love, they feel that. They get to know that because that string that connects you, although the silver cord is cut and the aqua cord is cut, now you're not connected through those ways. You're connected through this higher level of string theory that, especially to people and animals, you have deeply and profoundly loved. It's amazing.
Mhm. And so when those strings are severed and we're still connected to them on a they're in a different dimension, what about those higher chords? How are we connected then?
You are connected through the Akashic record you have with the person.
Okay, that
I
makes
mean,
sense.
that's the simplest explanation. I have had probably many lives with her. In this life, she was my niece. She might have been my daughter in another life, or a sister, or a mother. So we have a connection. And this is why when someone dies, we say to the family, love never dies. Love is always there. You're always connected through love. And it doesn't matter whether they're a ghost or they're, a soul in the fifth dimension, which they're going to get a lot more help up there. You're always going to feel that love.
And so theoretically, your niece, hypothetically, is still alive in a different parallel reality, and that could be another reason why you could still be connected through your blue cord if she's existing in another parallel reality.
That's entirely possible. Even
Okay.
though we're having trouble understanding exactly how that would work. The problem with metaphysics is it's beyond the physics you think you know. So as scientists begin to wrap their brain around quantum entanglement and string theory, when we are bringing it down to our connection between people, it becomes much more relevant, real, and possible. Oh, I know I'm connected to so and so. I got a phone call from a longtime friend of mine in San Diego yesterday. And I mean, it's like we never left. That the friendship was there, the enjoyment, it was just so much fun to talk to her. And she is this bright, upbeat personality, and it was wonderful. I had another San Diego. Yesterday was my San Diego day. San Diego, and she had a ghost that had just died, and she's trying to cross her over, and this woman wanted to thank her for something she had done that was really profound. Once she'd thanked her, she was, off to the higher realms. And it was a kind of a beautiful moment because, we knew each other and we could, I could be helpful. So it's fascinating how this works.
It is absolutely fascinating. And so, um, I know I have another question. Let's see here. I wrote down in some ways, it's the timeline. We talked about that, which is great. So recently, about 3 weeks ago, I went for a walk and with two of my friends. We do this meditative walk and try to keep our raising our frequency. We're very spiritual, me and these two girls. And I live in Pasadena, so there's a lot of trees. And so I was walking down this hill and I came across this squirrel. That the squirrel was dead. It was on his belly. Then I was like, whoa. And then I was like, maybe he's playing dead. So I got up to it and it dragged its body. It was injured. And he went into the grassy, rocky area and he just flopped. And he was barely breathing. And I was like, oh no. I wasn't going to leave the squirrel there. No way. And so for about 15, 20 minutes, trying to figure out what to do with the squirrel, I ended up calling 911 because it was 6 p.m. And I said, okay, I don't know who to call because the Humane Society's closed. So then they got wild animal rescue in Pasadena, the city. So like, great, we'll have someone over. Someone's gonna come and rescue the squirrel, and that's just how they do it there. Okay, great. So while my friends and I were waiting with the squirrel, and I try and go to a neighbor. I try to give it water. It's barely moving, opening its eyes, and then I text one of my friends who has a squirrel, who almost raises squirrels, and I said I don't know what to do, but she said it could be an hour or two before rescue comes to rescue the squirrel. Why don't you take the squirrel home and wrap him up, keep him safe until and let the animal rescue know that you went home instead. I said that's a good idea. And right as I did that, I realized because that morning, actually the night before, I was at my mom's house, and my brother passed away last year. And occasionally, very occasionally, I go into his bedroom and I like to feel his stuff, smell his clothes. And there's a black tank top, and I put it on. I was like, oh, because my brother wasn't much bigger than me, his stuff kind of fits. So I was like, oh, perfect. It's a hot day, you know. So when I found the squirrel, I was wearing his tank top. And when my friend said to me, take your shirt off and wrap the squirrel, I was like, I don't. It was my brother's shirt. Okay, so I took it off and I wrapped them up like a newborn baby, and I was holding this squirrel, and I was falling in love with this squirrel. And so right as I'm walking down the street holding the squirrel, the animal rescue comes, and I started explaining what happened, and they said, okay, we'll keep the squirrel. If we can rehabilitate, we'll put the squirrel down. If it's damages, it's the most humane thing to do. And I said, well, what happens if he makes it? And they said, well, we bring him back to the street. And I was like, oh, perfect. So right when I was about to unwrap him, I looked at him and I looked at my friends and I said, I can't. This was my brother's shirt, but I have this force of energy. I feel it was my brother telling me to leave the squirrel supported in his energy. So I left the squirrel in his shirt, and I
Mm-hmm.
put it in the box, and I was in tears, and I couldn't stop crying. And so the next day I was obsessed. I took pictures of the squirrel when I left, and I was obsessed. I was looking, I was crying, I wanted to find the squirrel, but my girlfriend said, no, it's not a good idea. Don't get attached to it. Just let the squirrel do what it's got to do. So that was 3 weeks ago, and then about a week ago, I was meditating and connecting with my brother, but not purposely. I sat down to meditate, and in comes my brother in an image, and he has the squirrel on his shoulder, and he's smiling, and the squirrel's happy with his tail. And I said, and at that moment, I was like, hang on, I'm not making myself think this. I know it's coming to me. I feel the squirrel didn't make it in this dimension, this parallel life. The squirrel did not make it, but for some reason, somehow, the squirrel was tethered to my energy with my brother and that shirt. And so I feel that it's that none of these things. There's no such thing as coincidence. First of all, I hate to say it, but I feel the squirrel really didn't make it in this life, and that he's in that realm with my brother. And I had to share that because all of this stuff is making sense to me, and as I put the puzzle pieces together and realize how much peace there actually is to that.
Well, that's a wonderful story. I think that is remarkable because yes, the squirrel died, but he was wrapped in a loving energy, which
Hmm.
raised his frequency at death. And then it's like he was embraced by light. And that is really, really, really tremendous. So, wow, thank you for that story. And thank you for this whole show. I mean, we're at an hour now,
Yeah.
the super fast hour. So, we'll have to come up with some other wild,
love
crazy topics.
I'd love to. You know what I'd love to talk about is I've been finishing or I keep replaying your Karma and Frequency book. So I would like to talk about karma and frequency with that. That would be incredible.
All right. Well, we'll put that down for a different time. So thank you, Lino, for being with us and sharing all your ideas and concepts and for asking important questions. And that's what's fun is that there's no particular right answer. We can just throw out all different kinds of ideas and let people kind of try them on like fun clothes. So, well, thank you all for listening to the Ghost Helpers podcast. The Ghost Helpers app is free on Amazon. This will eventually be on YouTube. And please like and share and subscribe to the Ghost Helpers channel. And if you're interested in any of the books that I have written, they are on Amazon and they are available also on the ghosthelpers.com website. Thank you all, and we'll talk again soon. Bye bye.